Welcome to everybody to the symposium of, connected to the exhibition We Need More Than One Term for These Big Things. The exhibition is upstairs, in the first floor, and you can still look at it throughout the whole time. Also tonight it's closing at 10. So if someone hasn't seen it yet, you can go. Or again. Thanks for coming. And it's also the last 2 days of the exhibition. When planning this symposium, I was always wanting to have different formats also in this symposium. So tonight there will be mainly performative acts happening, and tomorrow it will start at 11. If you don't have a schedule, schedules are also outside and where the jackets are. And tomorrow there will be more lectures, but the lectures will also differ a little bit in form. I named my thing lecture, but it will be a mini lecture. It's not so long as I thought. And I'm now having this situation where I also kind of feel I have to make an introduction, but also want to do a lecture and also say welcome and everything. But I said welcome already. So I'm now talking about a little bit in a meta level about, I think, my practice, or what I think about creating and structuring work, or an approach of maybe also how to ethically think, or how one finds an ethics towards one's own work. Okay, mini lecture is called The Proper Form. When thinking about the word proper, which in my imagination means something like rightful or correct, I have to smile. I guess me smiling is on the one hand a reaction to catch myself using some mechanism out of my toolbox of mechanisms on how to react on a difficult word. That might raise eyebrows, but I also will use it anyway. Out of an intuitive interest and curiosity over what it might have in store for me. And on the other hand, I'm totally aware that I have used the word which might provoke in this sense. But at the same time know that I have a correct word in mind for what I want to say, but it is something slightly shifted and a different word. This might be the word appropriate, the appropriate form. But first, some thoughts on the word proper again, as I find it also an interesting word, as it seems to be connected to a world that I don't feel comfortable to define myself with. Oftentimes, in various phases in my life, even have rebelled against. It seems to be connected to a world where one does fit in when organizing yourself and your life to a certain kind of socially approved set of appearance and life circumstances, which includes being predictable, clean, well off, and belonging to some kind of majority group. Corresponding with that, also oftentimes barely anybody is raising a question on how and which kind of approval we teach each other about, how it came to existence as common sense, and why it has to be like this. This way of being crosses our lives in every area, even the one that we work in, the cultural world. I say even because there is still the belief existing that the cultural world is one where its protagonists lead a freer life and are exempt from the profane properness of ordinary life problems and social constraint. But looking more closely, this is absolutely not true. I think this is just a myth fed by traditional beliefs that an artist's life is more irresponsible and ignorant to social agreements, and that it might even has to be this way to achieve creative genius. Bullshit deriving from narcissistic hierarchic modes and attempts to be more special than others. This is just another mindset of beliefs in order to organize everyone and make ourselves predictable to each other. I think the main difference and misunderstanding between the two worlds is really just different structures of a working day, and the knowledge and belief of which kinds of occupations belong to the term work. So, if proper is a word that belongs to the sphere of an ethical system of a majority, I still find details in that above described idea actually very useful for my work. This is, for example, hanging or installing a work of art properly, like really properly, which can either mean like in measurements, but also in the way the work is intended to be installed. Or, for example, communicating properly, as far as possible in a decent time frame, so others have still time and a chance to react and interact with me. Having no mistakes in the printed matter that I publish, foreseeing processes, etc. You see, I mean simple practical things here, but nonetheless important to me. It is raising some kind of energy that seems to be connected to a communicative level to others, if you want, the majority and some kind of ethics that many share. This already touches the realms of awareness, or even some ethics of awareness. So I'm kind of choosing where I find it useful to act properly, with a certain intent for a desired outcome, following that aim of making myself clear in my intent to others, but also caring for a cause. So the rightfulness in proper is connected to the development of some other, like a project, or through this also to someone else, or even able to help with transferring some idea or content. I think the term choosing and being aware already brings me now closer to the word appropriate, the one that I find especially interesting, and which is somehow related to proper, like they have a kinship but different temperaments. And then later the word form. Appropriate in this sense also seems, when read, to have a dry, traditional vibe to it, like being dressed appropriate, or the dictate to be politically correct, in a sense where one doesn't feel to speak freely. But I am intending to apply the word appropriate more in the sense of an all-over awareness of mixed ways of approaching or thinking about things, meaning to count in various ways of thinking and feeling out a structure, a person, a group, or a project, a text, an exhibition. Not everything that was considered in this process might then come to usage in the end. It is like turning something in your hands around and looking at it from all sides and under different presumptions. Something, an object, person, or structure is touched within the realms of awareness, knowledge, and consciousness. So, adequacy, in the end, is something which would be the sum of considerations that derive from equally knowledge and experience, as well as intuition and conscious awareness. The process, though, can be quick, but also take some time. The time dynamic is also part of it all, as well as the economic premises. In this sense, also taking in consideration that the elements of this procedure are shifting, quick or slow, the ethics of appropriateness towards another are not to be valued as a model of acting per se. It is like more a mindset or like a morale. The goal actually, at least for me, is to find a reason and a way how and why it makes sense to step on the scene and try to present a statement to the world. As I don't want to contribute more to the properness of stating second-hand thematic zeitgeist missions, which can easily happen with group shows and when one has to sell a yearly program to sponsors or public funding authorities, or just has a narcissistic approach to the best way of climbing the hierarchy ladder in the public eye, or just giving oneself the appearance of contributing some political correctness to the world. I think, though, it's possible to combine thematic statements with careful consideration with the inherent talents of the various formats at hand. I think there is just some self-awareness and knowledge needed how to create this combination. In this sense, appropriateness is not only taking care of all the aspects one can possibly consider and then end up with wanting to do the right by every aspect. It also means choosing against parts of the known structure or possible ways of doing something. But, and this is crucial, not coming from an only subjective or excluding point of view, but more as a conscious act in the realms of awareness for an entirety of a project, a statement or a work of art. Or I am stating this carefully as a member of society. So the approach of appropriateness is not per se didactic, not underlying a theme, not underlying properness, just using it, not using one model. It is democratic in a carefully considered and realizable way, and it takes its possible meaningfulness to others from using a spectrum of acting on awareness within one's own consciousness. The only duty is to never stop training one's consciousness in all directions and then choose. So the act of choosing all over again and not allowing one model of procedure or belief system can be also traced in and discussed with the thinking of Levinas' phenomenology of alterity, which focuses on otherness as a reference of the self and the other as a referential system as a given. It is an approach to find ethical meaning in something that is appearing to us and stating also that there is a permanent appearance of something other, which in fact is happening to all of us all the time in truth, even to ones that lead proper lives. Levinas tries with his strategy to describe the other as an alternative other, something that disrupts, something that cannot be denied, and that reduces the power of control of one's own consciousness. The self-involved ego is reduced and disarms the intentionality of the initial purpose. So in Levinas' thinking, the only appropriate way to encounter these appearances of this otherness that address us out of nowhere, even we might know about their existence, is with the ethics of alterity. He talks in this realm also about responsibility. But in his special case, when talking about responsibility, he doesn't give at hand special instructions or commandments. But what is crucial to him is that an ethics doesn't apply primarily before a relationship is formed as such. He doesn't talk of like first I form my ethics and then I act on them in relationship to others or something other. It's more on the contrary. First the conscious connections appear, doesn't matter one that we choose out of desire or one that just happens to us. And I cannot objectify it. That means I have to first accept it as relational fact, accept it as an ethical entity and as such as a consequence of making a connection to something or someone. At this point, he doesn't talk yet about norms of interaction. He just states the necessity to let oneself be affected by this otherness and finding a way to deal with it. He doesn't talk about solving it, like, for example, through knowledge, more about awareness, combined with the acknowledgement of concern. That would be, in Levina's sense, already ethics. Because connected to this, it is impossible not to feel called upon to find an answer or reaction towards the appearance of another. I can find myself deciding to neglect the offer of appearance. But that would be already something that I cannot justify, which means I come into a conflict with the self. The other way around, it cannot be taken for granted, or at least it is unknown if the other is appearing with the same awareness towards ethics of the relational concept of alterity, which means I would have already objectified the other with specific norms and beliefs. The other then would merely be an alter ego of myself. Levinas would therefore say, me, myself, I am always a little bit more responsible towards the other than it, he or she is to me. The possible asymmetry of relations is accepted beforehand and it's expected. So Levinas is pushing phenomenology to its limits when he is not interested so much in the description of the appearance of things and circumstances as such, but is interested in what happens when things appear that are asymmetrical and hard to deal with, like things that we cannot objectify but appear anyways. In this sense, it is interesting to me to try and integrate these ethics of awareness into my work, as clearly I'm interested in making contributions to the world that possibly might create meaning to others. But I also find it important to not create statements or answers that appear normative or self-involved. I'm therefore happily accepting and even pushing for the figuration of non-objectifiable appearances and formations, but trying to work at the same time against formlessness and irrelevance. I'm totally against cynicism in my work, but not in my thinking. I respect properness and magic equally, and again, I have to smile. I actually have fun with this kind of described ethics of appropriate awareness, using knowledge and empathy on various meta and not so meta levels and creating positive twists or concerns.